Thank you very much for being here. Thank you to those who are online. This is an open forum session, number 40, on governing the future internet, focusing on Web 4.0 and virtual worlds. Even though anyone in the room may also need to wear headsets in order to hear us over the background noise, and if any of you wonder what's going on online, it's just that it's a relatively open room. My name is Pierce O'Donoghue. I work for the European Commission in DG Connect, and we're very happy to sponsor this open forum on issues which I will just speak about briefly, and then we have a great panel which our moderator will see us through. Over a year and a half ago, at the beginning of last year, the European Commission adopted a communication on virtual worlds. Some of you know that as the metaverse. We didn't want to get into branding issues early on, so for us it's virtual worlds. But it's very much some of the components which will make up Web 4.0, moving from the on-screen or on-headphone immersion to full immersion, to virtual presence, to extended and virtual reality, and to 3D surround sensory experiences, and which are not just for entertainment purposes. It's not just people playing video games with 3D masks on. It's of course a massive number of applications in the industrial, social, health and other areas. The Commission is very interested in the challenges which these technologies will have, of course, on society, on the services delivered over the internet, but we also have to look at the impact on the internet technology, internet functioning itself. And that's really why we wanted today to focus on one thing which we in the European Commission said we must look at. It is the governance of Web 4.0, the impact particularly of virtual worlds. And what I want to stress from the start is that we want to do so in a multi-stakeholder process. We are not in the business of building new fora. We are not in the business of creating new structures. It's rather, we could have picked other technologies to have the same discussion, whether it's blockchain, obviously artificial intelligence, while we'll all be talking about quantum. How does that impact on the current multi-stakeholder process? And what lessons can we draw from the multi-stakeholder community as to how we need to adapt the current processes, including and particularly the IGF itself? What will be the impact on ICANN, although they will of course be leading as well in those technical discussions? And what else, particularly what new stakeholders do we need to bring into the discussion? And that's very much why we are here launching this discussion here at the IGF. We hope to have good input into the next IGF in Norway, and not as a sidebar, but as part of this consideration, and why we really appreciate everybody's input to this discussion. Noah's back. As you all know, we have the WSIS Plus 20 process at the end of next year, and we believe that that process should be looking not necessarily at architectures, because we believe that the current architecture is the right one, but actually looking forward. What are the new challenges that the multi-stakeholder process needs to address? What does that mean in terms of stakeholders? What configurations do we need? How does the IGF and other fora need to adapt? Starting from the technical layer, we have representative from the IETF in the room, all the way up to the service layer, the applications layer, and then the governance principles as such with regard to protection of the individual and society and other securities. So these are issues which we wish to hear from you. This will help us in our thinking, but also we feel should help to give a good input collectively to the WSIS process and build then the basis for work beyond next year in these fora for actually working it out. And here we rely on your input. We of course maintain the same values that have driven collectively our work in the past on internet governance. Maybe I could say digital governance, but that in itself is a political discussion which we won't get into today. But it is really to ensure that as these new technologies come on, that those principles of open, secure, inclusive and accessible internet technologies remains the basis for all the work that we do, and that we actually are able to anticipate challenges. There will be, not least the fact that new technologies are moving so fast, and we have to keep up with that. Others may otherwise step in. In the past, we've had various bogeymen in the internet governance world. At first, it was the bogeymen of the huge global company controlling everything and everybody. More recently, it's been the bogeymen of governments and states who want to control the internet and control their citizens on the internet. Whatever about those rather stereotypical extreme cases, what we do know is that the technology is itself presenting us with challenges, and we need to talk about it. We need not be afraid of discussing it, so that we are actually ahead of the curve. With that, therefore, I am very happy to hand over to our moderator for this session. Thank you for being with us. That's Barbara Kudzmanaite, who will now present herself and the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Piers, for the opening remarks, and thank you for initiating the session. Hello, everyone. Thank you for everyone joining us in the room and those connecting online. I hope you can hear us and be with us throughout the discussion. So we indeed, with the increasing maturity of technologies enabling virtual worlds and the evolution of the internet towards Web 4.0, it is important to kickstart this conversation about how we can ensure that this development takes place in an inclusive, ethical way, while also preserving very much the global and open nature of the internet, as Piers just reiterated. And I cannot wait to deep dive with my panel members to discuss these questions around approaching Web 4.0, what challenges that raises and what opportunities that raises, and what also this means for how we approach the governance of the next generation of the internet and virtual worlds. So to kickstart, maybe a bit of who's who in the room here today and with us online. I am Barbara Kudzmanaite. I'm a research manager at BPMI, and we are supporting European Commission's work on this Web 4.0 and virtual worlds governance initiative. And if you want to chat more about what we're doing to support the European Commission, I will be very happy to talk to you also after the session and happy to answer any questions in that regard. And today I'm joined by a fantastic panel of panelists from across the world. To start with us here in the room, we have Professor Toshio Obi, who is Professor Emeritus and Advisor of Waseda University, also Advisor of ITU Secretary General for Academia and Chair for CD Project on Silver Innovation. So several titles, and thank you so much for being us here today. Online, joining us, we have Ms. Sarah Nicole, who is a Senior Policy and Research Associate at Project Liberty, where she focuses on technical and academic governance frameworks. And next to me, I have sitting Mr. Israel Rosas, who's the Director of Partnerships and Internet Development at the Internet Society. Across myself, I have Mr. Rafał Kowalski, who's the Director of the International Cooperation Department of the Ministry of Digital Affairs of Poland. So thank you for being with us here today. And online, let me check if we have joining us. We should have Mr. Raymond Silor-Mamata, who is the founder and president of e-Governance and Internet Governance Foundation for Africa. So I will just look a little bit at the screen to cross-check that Mr. Mamata managed to connect and is able to be with us here today. I see some shaking, so in case Mr. Mamata manages to come back, we will welcome him into the panel as well. And finally, we have Mr. Piers O'Donoghue, Director for the Future Networks, Directorate of DG Connect, European Commission. So as a researcher, I have a lot of questions that I cannot wait to unpack together with you going forward. Maybe just a quick format on format. We'll have roughly 3-4 minutes per remarks, and we have some time at the end for questions for anyone in the room. We will have a chance to speak up, so please reflect as we discuss on any questions you might have. So to start, I would like to explore a little bit the why of the governance equation, why in the first place it's important to talk about the governance of Web 4.0 and virtual worlds, and how will emerging technologies that are also already quite maturing, like AI, blockchain, virtual and extended reality, but also quantum computing, as Piers was mentioning, might reshape or influence the evolution of Web 4.0 governance. So to start, Rafał Kowalski, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, the host, for having me in here. It's such a pleasure and honor to be the part of the panel with so many people all around the globe who are really experts in the field. So very concrete, to the point. From the point of view of the government, I believe any democratic government, internet governance nowadays is a kind of a stable but still evolving environment with already well-established global institutions, and which is quite important, multi-stakeholder model, kind of strong one. That's why we are all here, and this is IGF is just the proof that we are already in the very democratic environment. So of course, it's nothing new, like to try for the very new occasion to manage or plan to manage the requirements for the new era of internet. However, of course, the advent of 4.0 internet, Web 4.0, it presents both challenges and, of course, the threats, the opportunities. And of course, we have a long list of questions whether the current system of existing internet governance is ready for this new, maybe not revolution, but evolution, so the next generation of internet. When we consider the previous internet revolutions we already observed, Web 4.0 can significantly impact I would believe that most of the aspects of our lives, in terms of daily routine lives, domestic lives, but also in international sphere. So discussing and the urgency to discuss the governments is crucial. It's quite crucial just to steer technological development towards transparency, which is the first, inclusiveness, which is the second, and accountability. I believe those three are the pillars. So by anticipating technological changes, we should ensure that this evolution of the internet is guided in a way that it prevents internet, but of course most of all the users of internet, from being divided into different categories of virtual users of different words, managed by rules imposed by some entities, not guaranteeing the equity and not guaranteeing the equality of all the users and all the governments, all the stakeholders from all around the globe. So of course, when we think about opportunities, what Web 4.0 can bring to the world, of course, first of all, I think about education. So remote learning, even more developed one, training, medicine, entertainment, infrastructure development, and of course, which is quite important nowadays, so natural resource management. It should bring the positive. Of course, one of the very most positive opportunities is the creation of virtual twins of real-world objects, and it can, of course, improve operational efficiency, safety, and skill and development across various sectors, with medicine as the priority, I would say. But also there are many factors which are quite, maybe not pessimistic, but they're pose threats. So first of all, we should try to make an efficient way to exclude the chance or the risk for any social exclusion. And of course, any disparity in access to information and education. It should be the priority for all the governments. We should try to establish new set of rules fighting against crime in virtual spaces with regards to all the new aspects of Web 4.0. Also, the use of, or misuse rather, of biometric data. Mental health issues also should be kind of an important for all the governments and all the stakeholders. When we think about addressing those issues, those threats, we need to have in mind, bear in mind that it requires a multi-sided approach. So it should include ensuring data security and privacy. It should enhance cybersecurity. It should be based on a deep analysis of societal impacts, and of course, which we can't forget, quite important, so to protect minors, so underage users. The evolution of Web 4.0, it will be likely influenced by emerging technologies. It's quite obvious, such as AI, blockchain, virtual and extended reality, quantum computing, which was already mentioned. So the governance of Web 4.0, it will need to evolve into even more transparent and participatory model than nowadays we do have. The example I can give is the integration of AI and quantum computing, which will raise ethical questions about surveillance, data use, and privacy. So governance framework, it will need to establish clear policies for protecting user rights, to ensure transparency, especially of AI systems, and to handle ethical dilemmas around automation. The governance of this new kind of internet will need to ensure that these technologies can interoperate seamlessly while maintaining user control over the data. Summarizing, because I wouldn't just to use over my time of 3 minutes. So Web 4.0 governance will need to be flexible, adaptive, and transparent. It should incorporate input from a wide range of stakeholders, and for sure it must balance the potential benefits of emerging technologies, the one I mentioned, AI, blockchain, XR, quantum computing, with the need, which is the most important, with the need to protect individual rights, privacy, security, in this very complex new digital ecosystem. So I would say that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your views. And indeed, we see with Web 4.0, it is indeed all about creating these really immersive real-time 3D environments. And already these days we're talking a lot about in the forum as well about children's safety online. So of course all of these issues extend to these very much immersive environments. You already alluded to some of the things of the what and the how. We will be coming back to those as well as we proceed with our panel. We'll just do a last check whether Mr. Rimon Mamata is with us, just to cross-check if we have him online. In that case, I will turn to my colleague next to me, Israel Rosas, from the Internet Society, to still take a look at the why question a little bit further, maybe from also this technical perspective, why we need to talk about governance of Web 4.0. So looking at evolution towards Web 4.0, Internet architecture.
Hi.
Hello? Unfortunately, it seems it's difficult to have Mr. Mamata with us. So then back to Israel Rosas, looking at the evolution towards Web 4.0, does the existing core Internet architecture provide a sufficient foundation to accommodate the needs and complexities of Web 4.0?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank for the invitation. And I think this is the right way of discussing new topics in which we have the opportunity to have a voice in the conversation. At the Internet Society, we are following up with a lot of attention these developments. We understand the general idea behind what it is mentioned as Web 4.0, but we would like to know more details on the specifics, like what kind of applications would be deployed. We've seen that in general, the Internet has been developed since the early beginning as a technology-neutral general-purpose network. It's this collection of networks, more than 70,000 networks interconnected, exchanging information. That core infrastructure has been flexible enough to accommodate needs all over the decades. We've seen the different applications, different services being deployed. And that's why we are interested in these debates, because as of now, it is really difficult to understand, for instance, what are going to be the border cases in which some of these developments we will need to be tackled from a different point of view in technical debates. In general, what we are seeing is that the internet has a group of critical properties that permit that the internet exists and thrives, and that's the key issue at play. Any new development, either technological, political, social, business, should be assessed to identify whether it impacts these critical properties of the internet. Because in some cases, we've seen that there are some unintended consequences when some new proposals are being put out there. So I think this is the right configuration to have opportunity for all stakeholders to participate. We've seen that there are diverse mechanisms within the technical community to address new challenges. For instance, the IGF has open bottom-up processes where all people can participate, can propose new solutions, can test new solutions, receive feedback on the feasibility of these developments. So in general terms, we are interested in how these conversations are progressing, just to keep understanding better what are going to be the concrete implications for the internet. So it's difficult to have like a concrete answer right now, but we are willing to keep engaged in the conversation, keep informed other stakeholders, but also hearing from other stakeholders.
Very much. So just to summarize in short, important to assess any new developments and their impacts on the internet going forward. I will turn now to what I understand, and we have Mr. Mamataviras online. So I will also ask again this why question, but maybe more from the global community as well. Looking globally, why is it important to talk about the governance of the evolution towards Web 4.0? Mamata, looking forward to hear your perspectives. Unfortunately, it still seems there's an internet connection issue, so I will then move on to the what. So talk a little bit about the foundational principles that we can have in mind as we look to the future of the increasing immersion and real life experiences. And we heard a little bit on why we need to talk about this. So I would like to turn to Sarah Nicole. So what we just heard of some of these challenges and opportunities you must keep in mind, and also the importance of doing this impact assessing the impacts on the internet. What do you see as some of the foundational values and principles that should underpin the governance of Web 4.0 and this evolution towards increasingly immersive virtual environments?
Thank you for the invitation. I hope you can hear me well. There's never discussion over the internet that do not encounter technical problems. So this is just the normal state of things. I generally agree with everything that's been said. So let me give you my 2 cents and push this a little bit further. So while we have hundreds of national, regional, international frameworks, foundational value that are fit for the digital age, or that are even prior to the digital age, like the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, we have always struggled to apply them effectively, and I believe we will certainly do so in Web 4.0 and virtual worlds. Every time there's a new technology breakthrough, we always ask the same question, how we should preserve privacy, transparency, accessibility, and so on. And this might be because the main issue lies primarily in the business model of the digital platform allowing us to interact online and the lack of alternative business model as well. So I think that adding more values and more principle is not the exact solution and would not be constructive to this discussion. I'd rather think that there needs to be a shift and a rethink of how we're conceiving the place of individuals in the digital world by giving them rights and control over their data. And at Project Liberty, we believe in 3 things mostly. We believe that we should give people voice in the governance of the spaces they log into every day, choice over their individual experience online, expanded opportunity to manage also their data. And the third is a stake in the value created by their own data. And this might be the first step towards a fair data economy that is characterized by competition, innovation, instead of a few monopolies that are capturing people's data. In virtual world and the web 4.0, the data generation will be even more important than in our current two-dimensional digital services, as interaction will need to be seamless, we've said it, and there needs to be actual immersiveness. So this is therefore crucial to have this rethinking before we get into this very moment of even more extensive data collection. And for effective governance, we will need to have a new business model centered around data agency for individual. We need to think of governance and business model as going hand in hand. And this is the effort that we are leading at Project Liberty Institute by focusing both on governance and especially the governance of a protocol that we steward, an open source and decentralized protocol that is called the DSNP, the Decentralized Social Networking Protocol. It's a protocol that allows users to have more control over their data. We have over 1 million users on it now. And by focusing also on building a fair data economy, and we did that through a research effort with key leaders, including the latest Economy Nobel Prize, Daron Acemoglu, where we focused on 4 main areas of action: digital infrastructure solution, new business model, strategic capital allocation, and policy framework. So for Web 4.0 and virtual world to truly thrive, they must embrace the shift towards user centricity, supported by innovative business model that enable multi-stakeholder, bottom-up and transparent governance framework. But one last thing about this bottom-up and multi-stakeholder approach, I wanted to always highlight the European Citizen Panel on Virtual World that took place, I think 2 years ago. I was invited as an expert for a full day, and talking to over 150 randomly selected EU citizens that were asked to design the approach to virtual world. It led to recommendation, among which I believe there was 8 fundamental principles for ethical development of virtual world. And I believe these principles should be kept, as they were brought by all of us. They were brought by citizens that represent us. And I believe also that this concept of the citizen panel is key in the process of making policy and bringing ethics to digital innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for these very timely remarks. Indeed, one note is on the competition in virtual worlds, and maybe if I can summarize a bit, that we should also really focus on end users as users rather than consumers in these environments. And also mention of the citizen panel, indeed we have end users, and they should also drive the principles that shape these environments going forward. I would also now turn to Professor Toshiobi to further maybe elaborate a little bit on these principles that can guide this user human-centric virtual environments. We heard a lot of mentions of data, the importance of privacy. Could you share also a little bit more from your perspective and research? How might privacy involve in these more immersive environments, and how can we further protect the rights of the users of these spaces?
Hello. Who is speaking on? Thank you very much for a very interesting talk. But frankly speaking, I'm not European. So I'm Japanese, and I thank you for your attending Kyoto, Japan IGF last year. And whatever we are talking about the next generation of the internet, I think we are really concerned with the multi-stakeholders. My issue is very, very clear. And multi-stakeholder has 2 different aspects. One is the more so-called the government, business, civil society, academia issues. And another one is the more global issues like Europe and Asia and Africa and some other continent. And I'm talking about the later one because Asia is a very vast territories, starting from South Pacific to Saudi Arabia is Asia. So what we should do is Asia, we call the, in terms of the GDP, it's almost half of the world GDP belongs to Asia. Also population is also China, India, Indonesia, Japan, we have Pakistan. They have huge populations. So what we should cooperate with the European Unions. I think the Asia group need a platform to work with the European Unions. And you did in the Kyoto meetings last year. And this year, we have a very interesting talk, so-called Wave 4.0, 4.0. It's quite important transition to so-called the metaverse in the future. So in other sessions, I listened to AI issues, and some other sessions talking about children's human rights on. So multi-stakeholder is really a big one. So this issue might be so-called European Union, EU-oriented programs. And I think Japan can, or Asia as a whole, might be very interested in working with you, the European Unions. That's one thing which I should say. And the second one is I'm the policy professor of the Japanese universities and policy advisor to NTT, which somebody told about. So between academia and business, we need more collaborations. Somebody said PPP. That's very good. And third one is the sustainabilities. And this project or program called Web 4.0 might continue as the sustainabilities for another 5-6 years to complete our missions. So please consider the Asia is a part of these programs and how we can work together. That is my comment first. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Obi. I think this is actually a very timely transition more to the question of how we can work together on approaching this next evolution of the web and how we can work together to guide and approach the governance of these immersive environments. So I would turn back to maybe Pierce O'Donoghue to reflect a little bit on how can we work together in this multi-stakeholder approach to best address the governance needs of Web 4.0.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, it's by listening to informed speakers such as we have today. No, genuinely, this is the process that we have to go through. So I was actually very attracted to the brief model that Israel said that, first of all, we have to, with those who are informed but with different perspectives, analyze whether a given technology or a given advance is a risk or presents a threat, in other words, presents a challenge. To then best assess how we go about addressing it. And in that context then, listening very carefully to what Sarah had to say, taking the user very much into account and introducing, I know that these terms have been fought over, but what we would consider to be a human-centric approach. It seems a given that when we are talking about technologies which will be to the point of being invasive, they will surround the individual or have the potential to do so, and will not be a two-dimensional interface, but a 3D 360-degree interface, where, because of the nature of some of the technologies, it might not be possible to put on mute if you wish to have a private conversation, and where the sensors are not tracking you. There will be devices which look at biorhythms and other bodily measurements, as well as being able to hear your environment. So the nature of that technological advance, while we've talked about protection of data, personal data, for a long time, it's a whole new thing, and therefore the human centricity, the focus on the user, giving control to the user, which I also heard from Sarah, is very important. And then it's a question, as I've said, of saying, right, these are the challenges, these are the principles which we have to either introduce, or in this case with the human centricity, strengthen. And as I've said, not then design something totally new, but with those challenges, look at how we need to develop and advance with regard to the internet governance processes that we have. Are they appropriate? Are they fit for purpose? Do they bring the right people to the table? Do they put the right focus? And also, are we not talking about theoretical problems if, for example, it turns out that the technology is not a problem? Or, let's not forget, maybe we already have the solution. Maybe the technical community has provided a solution and we just need to know about it, and it needs to be properly implemented or properly mandated. It might be voluntary codes which, with the evolution of technology, have to become something that are more mandatory in order to protect the individual or protect society, and so on. So it's that ability to look around what we have and what we need. And I just go back, my conclusion to that point is, again, once more to stress that this involves talking with one another. Professor Obi, this is not a European-centric analysis. We are doing a work because we feel it's very important in Europe, but we feel that every region is challenged. We will need to work together to address it. If we believe in a global internet, we have to have a global solution. And we hope to learn from what others have done. But I was nevertheless flattered that Sarah referred to the citizen dialogue that we have. That is, again, how we felt from the outset, before we even issued a policy statement as to how we were to address virtual worlds going forward. We entered into negotiation with stakeholders and citizens, and we will continue to do so. And we hope that everyone will engage in that process as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these remarks. I will start now a little bit jumping around to kind of explore further this question of how we can work together and how we can harness of us all being here today to reflect on this multi-stakeholder approach and how we can position this discussion within that. Sarah Nicole, I saw you nodding quite actively, so I will jump on that if maybe you have something further to reflect on and add to what Piers, I don't know who was saying.
Yeah, I fully agree with one part of your comment, which is about sometimes the technology already exists. It's already available. The problem, and especially when we talk about virtual world and social media spaces, basically is the problem of network effect. The big players will keep on having the users because they just have everything already in place. And so whatever is the new digital innovation, and we've seen this with AI, these big players will keep on gathering the users, despite having some technology that is more privacy enhancing, and that could be better for users. And I think this is where policy gets into place. This is where framework gets into place of recommending, for instance, that future digital infrastructure should be based on open source protocols, that it cannot be proprietary. And I feel like as a general community, we've given too much importance to self-regulation by those big tech. And there was, I think in 2023, the White House voluntary AI commitment. And this is essentially letting these companies write the exam by which they will be evaluated. And the result is that today, most of AI system and large language model are still very opaque. They're still black boxes and there's no transparency and the audit is very complicated. And so it's the same for virtual world, right? There was back in 2021, this video by Meta to advertise for their metaverse, where it was the vice president of the division that was featured in this video. And he said, if you were to be harassed in the metaverse, well, we could give you superpower, like you could create a bubble so you cannot be harassed anymore. And I think this is the kind of comment that we precisely need to focus on and find alternative trust and safety framework for effective regulation, because we cannot let those private companies with mostly for-profit motives be in power for what they define as a public square.
Thank you for sharing. I think indeed the list of things we need to explore, we need to research, is growing increasingly long as well. I will turn to also Mr. Rafal Kovnatsky to maybe also reflect a little bit on this. How can we work together? How can we learn from each other, also not just in Europe, but also globally? How can we harness this multi-stakeholder approach to discuss virtual worlds and Web 4.0?
Thank you once again for the question. I would like to thank Professor Obi just to mentioning that we are not only EU-oriented in here in this room. What I say, it goes beyond the European Union. I'm proud to represent one of the member states of the EU, but what I really believe can answer the question, your question, should be also covering all the possibilities all around the globe from the governmental point of view. So I believe that this governance framework we need to establish, it should be based on clear rules. So I would once again emphasize how important is transparency, how important is protection of user rights, how important are both of them with regard to artificial intelligence. So we would like to, by law, but also by practice and by collaborative cooperation between all the stakeholders, answer to the need to face some moral, ethical dilemmas. Of course, at the moment we have been already facing those issues not only in EU, but in many states all around the globe. Luckily, in European Union, we already established some legislation. Just say a few, like to some extent DMA, of course DSA, AI Act. So we already have got some regulation over online platforms, how to moderate their practices. And of course, with regard to moderation, it is really important to emphasize how crucial it is to ensure the user that with regard to artificial intelligence, they are not based, their situation is not based on the decision of AI itself, but they have got the right to appeal to the human being. So of course, this is quite important. I believe we should have the same protocol all around the globe, that AI is never the last resort. So there is always this right to appeal to the human being. I wouldn't mention, because we have no time, but only say a word that already we have trialed in many countries, not only in EU, but also in states of the United States, some procedures within the judicial system. So we have the countries where you can just sue anybody and go to the court, and the court wouldn't hear you, but AI would hear you on behalf of the court. But still, in all those soils, you have the right to appeal to the human being. So I believe that this protocol is quite crucial. The other issue, quite important, is the integration of artificial intelligence and quantum computing. And in case of governance frameworks, of course, it will raise several issues, like devices which enable access to virtual worlds. They possess a huge threat as a new potential attack vector. So we need to bear in mind that with virtual twins, digital replicas of real-world objects, they are quite obviously new potential targets. So high level of cybersecurity based on private-public cooperation, private-public sectors cooperation is quite important. It's really essential, especially for the metaverse's viability. There is a lack of comprehensive analysis, I would say, unfortunately, on the societal impact of virtual worlds. I would say real life societal impact, but it's really important to continue the works and research to investigate the addictive potential, which is the first threat, and specifically among vulnerable groups. Minors are, I would say, the target group number one. Which is also important. Virtual worlds must be supervised from the outset to protect all the minors for all the kind of usage. Some studies we've already faced with, the results of them indicate that already existing platforms contain numerous inappropriate contents for users under 18 with inadequate access restrictions and moderation. Of course, in EU we have more strict rules, but in many places all around the globe, it wasn't still applied. In case of data, okay, summing up, summing up of Web 4.0 governance, we will need to evolve towards a more transparent and participatory model because of the technologies and the nature of themselves, and building on principles that address this risk and challenges of virtual worlds in Web 4.0 requires a multifaceted approach. So let me summarize with once again prioritizing data security, privacy, enhancing cybersecurity, analyzing societal impacts, protecting underage users. As crucial steps, we need to go and establish all around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will also turn back again to Mr. Israel Rosas. You mentioned this important point about internet impact assessments. Discussing what we just heard on the importance of this transparent and participatory approach, how can then the multi-stakeholder internet governance approach best address the governance of Web 4.0?
Well, thank you. I was pleased in hearing that this openness to go and discuss these topics with different parts of the community, because in some cases I believe that when we see some tensions and some opportunities, the trend is to jump directly into the solution mindset and come and try to gather all the stakeholders to discuss how to solve a problem and going ahead. But the multi-stakeholder approach also includes gathering the stakeholders to determine if effectively there's a problem or not, if effectively there's something broken or not, because in many cases, as you mentioned, there are already working solutions. And then it's easier to go, for instance, to the IGF and to see what are those building blocks that are working, why those voluntarily adopted protocols and technologies are voluntarily adopted, and to have that conversation. That's important. Because at the end of the day, we are defending these technical critical properties of the internet because they are the ones that are enabling that the internet is a force for good, that is available to adapt, to evolve, to accommodate new applications, technologies, services, no matter the name under they are like grouped. So in general terms, we are advocating for bottom-up processes with collaboration, with transparency, with accountability, with full inclusion of all stakeholders, because all of the stakeholders have a specific set of knowledge and expertise that is needed to inform these decisions. The technical community has a concrete set of expertise, but it's the same with the other stakeholders. And that's why it's important that these kind of collaborative, open conversations are still happening to assess the best way forward.
Thank you. Maybe to borrow from what Rafal was saying, let's not jump to a revolution when maybe it's an evolution of things, and we can work with the stakeholders to discuss and identify approaches together. I will call back to Professor Obi as well, maybe to share a little bit if lessons, if any, on existing approaches and how we can work again to better govern emerging technologies in Web 4.0 and virtual worlds.
Yes, thank you very much. And since we have very limited time, 7 minutes, just I can say, as a professor of the universities, we need more attention to so-called the capacity building, human resource development for this issue, because Japan, China, India, Indonesia, ASEAN, and the Middle East, we call the Asia. Quite number of the population is behind, left behind already. So European Union group is your so-called the what you call horizontal societies, very close to level of the humanities. And we Asia, from Japan, Singapore, or Korea, we see a quite high level of the well-beings, but we have more than 10 so-called the less developed countries. Like, I should not mention the name, but so how we can so-called the transformation to metaverse, or on the way is the Web 4.0. But we are confusing the concept of Web 4.0 simply because you had Web 3.0 and you have Industrial 4.0. And how they can link to each other for the future internet societies. That's Asian people is wondering, and I think Pierre might answer very quickly about it. And also, I really enjoyed listening to how do you pronounce Rafal, okay, yeah, about the future of the European Union itself, because the Poland is the next presidency of the EU, and Norway will be next IGF. So it's really good time for European Union to consolidate or more attention to Web 4.0. So just I can say from a Japanese perspective, this is the best stage right now, the Saudi to Norway of the IGF. That's my final comment.
Thank you very much. We are running shortly out of time, so I would also like to turn to the audience if there are any questions in the room looking at Web 4.0. All right, we have 2 questions.
Hello, my name is Sandra Hoferichter from Eurodic, which is the European IGF. Not a question, rather a comment. When you talk about stakeholder inclusion, although I'm not anymore, I strongly suggest to involve youth in a meaningful manner. We just had today a very good session about youth participation, where it was mentioned that you really involve them by involving also drafting policy. And I know that it's sometimes hard because they are changing so quickly from one place to another. But I think it's worth the effort because not because only if it's that it's their future. They might have a totally fresh look on all this and give a really good input on all these things, and might even come up with creative solutions that others might not think of.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Abdullah Al-Hamid from Intimid. I believe while we are discussing so many areas in Web 4.0 in terms of regulations or policies or strategies, I believe the private sector have already moved super forward in so many areas, including academia and research. So what we need to do is to pay more attention towards what's going on in the industry, capture those things, and then see how can we treat them similar to some other industries like the fintech and others. So Web 4.0 should be driven by innovation and youth. And we should capture those things and then see how can we really enhance the experience for every user.
Thank you. So the importance of innovation and youth involvement, maybe any reactions? And we have a final question as well. Yeah. All right, go ahead and then we can maybe respond together.
Yeah, so I just had a couple of comments. First, I'm very heartened by what I heard in the panel, which is this human-centered focus on internet connectivity. But I'll say, as a member of the technical community, I have a number of questions, and I think that I'm really very much appreciate the multi-stakeholder consultation that's happening here. Do we really need to unpack some of the scopes here about what is the focus of what we're talking about? I'll just observe from the technical community, the word web and the internet are not interchangeable, and they mean very different things. And it's, it leaves me wondering, are other internet applications in scope here, or are they not? And then because we're borrowing words from the technical community about versioning the web, which is a little bit challenges, that typically involves breaking changes. And I hope what we're not talking about is we have an internet today and tomorrow we have a different internet, because typically when we involve the internet architecture, it's an evolution, because we certainly wouldn't want to risk disconnecting the 5 billion users already on the internet. We want to incrementally give them more capability and kind of more protections.
Thank you very much. Pierce, perhaps we can start with you.
Yeah, those are very good points. First of all, yes, when I talked about multi-stakeholder consultation, we want it to be inclusive, so including groups. The weakness that we have identified is particularly the barriers to representation of stakeholder groups from the global south and from developing countries, which we really must work on. But also then the point was made about industry innovation. It's the same thing as if there's a solution there already, maybe a solution which can be quickly adapted to a new challenge, then we should look at that and not reinvent the wheel. And finally, I will apologize. As I said at the start, we started talking about virtual worlds because there was a very large company which had part of the word metaverse in its name, and we didn't want to confuse people too much. We have played very fast and loose with Web 4.0. Partly because we wanted to differentiate from Web 3.0 the things that are going to happen, which maybe you, the technicians, will help us to understand will be absorbed into that architecture. There shouldn't be a break, and certainly we're not trying to break. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's what are the new challenges. So it's just to get understanding, maybe to grab attention as well, that we have spoken in these terms. But we have had serious discussions already over a number of years about, even though we thought it was part of 3.0, what hasn't been delivered under Web 3.0, but that's another conversation. So I'm very happy that we've got your attention, because we really need your participation. Thank you.
If the organizers of the panel will not send very angry stares at me, I have a final question I'd like to ask from the chat. That was raised by Mokaberi from Iranian academic community. And it's a bit long, so I will try to read it in full. The existing internet governance system is not sufficient to respond to the policy issues related to data, domain name, safety, health, common infrastructure standards and content, and requires the adoption of a comprehensive approach. and a new architecture. So can the smart combination of a multilateral governance model plus multi-stakeholder consultation model be appropriate here? Can the model of the International Aviation Organization, for example, be a good example to ensure this legality, health, and safety of cyberspace in the new generation of the web? Any takers on this reflection? Maybe Israel, I'm looking at you. Yeah.
Just quickly, I don't know the framework that this person is referring to, but I think that we will need like an additional session to discuss whether the framework is working or not, because in general, governments are part of the multi-stakeholder approach. So I think it's like a longer conversation.
It's a longer conversation, I think a lot of which we're hearing around this week at IGF as well. So thank you very much for your responses. I see we have out of time, so maybe I'll just hand over to Piers on a final future-looking remark on the road ahead.
Well, thank you, Barbara, and thank you to all the speakers. Part of a process of consultation, and one which we hope to continue. So we look to your forward participation. And on that, a piece of unabashed publicity, but taking this process forward, do you see as no, you're not hearing me? Okay. How is that now? Is that working? Professional food conference. Cut off because of time. It's a conference on the 31st of March and the 1st of April in Brussels, which is on this exact theme. And we would really like to have as much participation as possible. We'll be examining the possibility for off-site participation as well. But it is really to continue and dig deeper on some of these issues. 1 hour is not enough time. Some big questions have been asked. So we really need to have a full discussion, which we then hope to feed back into the IGF in Norway. This is part of the multi-stakeholder process. This is not building new paths. This is to feed back in, as I said, intersessional work. So with that, just to say that we've put the issues on the table, but we need to listen to what others think as to whether they are the right issues and what are the possible solutions to them as this technology rolls out. Thank you to everyone. Thanks to the speakers, and thank you, Barbara, for your time. And I hope that everyone has a great IGF. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.